Yeah, so I'm what we deem a senior expert at McKinsey, which is basically an associate principal, a junior partner. Um, I have been with McKinsey since 1997. I graduated Poly in '93 as an industrial technology guy, but I did do an internship at Toyota first, up at the NUMMI plant in the quality group, and then joined Toyota after. And basically, I was all externally facing. And the only thing I cared about when I left Cal Poly was to travel, and I've done that in spades. So I've worked in 30 plus countries so far, and everything that Eric mentioned. But I spent a lot of my time in aerospace and automotive and everything in between. Now I'm doing some consumer products up here. I've done everything from toilet paper to jets. So I like it to keep it a mix. So yeah, senior expert. You know.
Yeah. So Dave, I always sort of find it interesting, and I'm lucky enough to, have you volunteer to come in and talk to the folks, and I get a little update every time. So can you talk maybe a little bit about like what your current lean challenge is, or, I know you can't really give names, right? It's kind of part of the deal. But.
Yeah, it's okay. I can give enough detail to make it hopefully interesting for you all. Yeah, if you choose a career in consulting, generally it's a 3-year shelf life as opposed to a 20 plus year shelf life. I just enjoy the mix because you switch your job every 3 to 6 months, right? You're in a new location. So I have a number of clients, but I'll talk about the two primary. One is a private equity firm that has merged two big farms actually out in our valley, which is great because it's as close as I've come to an in-town study. It's sitting out in Fresno. And so it's literally the lean stuff in the plant is the traditional stuff, Eric, you've probably been going through, and you mentioned standard work. I mean, it's a big part of, how do you pick, how do you pack, what are some of the tools that we've learned in automotive for 60 plus years that we could take out into the field and harvest better. How do you get lean around thinning, pruning, and everything like that, and merge these two companies, which means you have to address culture, org structure, all that kind of good stuff. That's one of my clients. And the other one right now sitting in Utah is working on consumer goods, and it's more traditional with they're growing really fast. They've grown out of a garage. Just if you kind of think about, how computers were developed, that's what it feels like with these guys, because they came up with a very innovative product. It's, you would all know the name if I shared it, and it's growing super fast, and they had to become a manufacturer, and they're not good at manufacturing. So one of the things I said to the CEO and the COO is sitting in one of their new plants, I'm like, guys, you're going to be calling back another consultant in 5 years to figure out how you should have started up this greenfield opportunity, which is so great, right? In the lean world, you don't get a lot of greenfield, new plant startup opportunities to do it right from the beginning. So I'm helping them through that. So there's a lot of strategy stuff where it's, what's your manufacturing competency? What do you want to be? What's your network optimization? So where should you build? What should you build there? What's your supply chain? How do you link that all together and not become the vertical integrator company? And at the same time, build best practices, which is more traditional lean in quality and labor productivity and equipment and maintenance and production planning, in your performance and goal planning, and how you build a culture that people actually want to come to work every day. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing up here.
Well, Dave, that looks like a mouthful, and I think that greenfield or starting from scratch opportunity is sort of really rare in our field, and so much of what the students are learning and where we sort of start learning lean and practicing is on sort of the process improvement side. But you're in a situation where kind of the processes don't exist, right? And
yeah, they exist. They're just not. I mean, one of the interesting things, Eric, like we've talked about this a lot, but designing a line seems simple, But one of the things we did here is there's a tool that Toyota used, which was just add up all of your cycle time, your true work content in the job. And our line in the NUMMI plant was 3 mile long and 17 and a half hours to build a car, but you need to produce a car every 60 seconds, right? So you divide that total time, 17 and a half hours, by the rate you want to produce, and it literally tells you how many people you should have on the line, right? If you were perfectly balanced.
Right.
So we did that here, and it was about a 50% reduction, and they're growing. So great. This isn't about removing people, which I don't like to be involved in. This is about how do you grow and mitigate the risk to getting people, which you guys have all watched the news, right? For some reason, with 10 million jobs available, 8 million people out of work, we still can't staff. And that's consistent across most of my clients. So this is about mitigating the risk to that challenge. So anyhow, we're doing some of those basic tools, work balance charts, Yamazumi boards, all that kind of good stuff, which is super fun because, I'm out on the floor most of the time, which is usually what I do. I'm not sitting in the back with a computer, although some of the time, but I'd rather be out there on the floor.
Yeah. So Dave, I'm probably in a little bit of sort of danger here, but I'm going to go here anyway. But so these students, we got to be sort of careful on the number of Japanese words we threw out, and I'm not real familiar with Yamazumi boards. Can you give us the easy version?
Yeah. So the easy version is just a stacked bar chart, which has your job. So if you have 20 steps in your job for every operator, so 15, 20 steps, you stack it up with the time it takes for each of those steps. So you can look across all the operators and say, hey, look, we're trying to target 75% of the rate we want to hit. So if you want to do 100 units every, if you want to produce something every 100 seconds, I'm going to give you 75 seconds worth of work or 85 seconds worth of work. So you have a gap between that, so we can hit 100%. So the Toyota line runs at 98% efficiency, and the reason is we loaded the line to 15% less than that, right? So every operator has time. We're not trying to load it right to the end. So the Yamazumi boards all across the Toyota shop, and it's the teams that own it, and they see their work balance.
Yeah.
So sorry if that was too much.
No, actually that's good. And I knew about that, but I didn't know, wasn't familiar with the name, but I'm familiar with the concept. Hey, David, so we kind of geek out a little bit on the manufacturing side of things, and that's kind of where a lot of this stuff was born, and it's kind of straightforward to apply. We got a lot of students in this class that are in accounting and marketing and finance and whatnot. Yamazumi boards for accountants, is that sort of in their future somewhere? And they just, maybe it's not there, but it's going to be there by the time they're senior managers, or what do you think?
It's completely in there, not from the Yamazumi board perspective, but from the, one of the things we're doing is we're looking at the 2024 vision of where this company wants to go financially. Where should they be? What does that mean? And how many employees should you have? And how do you staff it? So linking that budget, all the financials, and all down to the should cost analysis to the, everything around standard costing, so that we can track all the initiatives that have to get us there. So we're basically building that. I mean, people on my team, I've had doctors, lawyers, accountants, everything, right? So, and we're doing everything from, like I said, toilet paper to jets, but I've done sawmills with lawyers. So yeah, it certainly is applicable, but the financial side is, and the marketing side is, on a different piece of the strategy, but it's certainly linked.
Right.
I mean, we spend a lot of time linking the transformation office, if you will, to all these initiatives to make sure that there's actually accountability for how much impact you're going to have, how long it should take, and the whole project management side has to be directly linked into the company finances.
Yeah. So. And David, from our previous discussions and whatnot, I know that you're sort of a really strong believer in sort of linking linking everything to those sort of final output measures or goals of the company, right? So that this all, everything sort of pencils out, right? It's all got to be connected to those top level goals.
Yeah, I mean, not many. I mean, that's the thing about lean, right? Lean makes it more difficult on the senior team than it does on the poor guy on the shop floor. It's the opposite, right? Because of the transparency that's there now on, hey, look, I made a bad decision to spot buy whatever X product, and I've got 40 days on hand, and I should have had 6, is like out there in front of you, nowhere to hide. And certainly you're driving productivity on the shop floor. But I have like 100 operators working with me on this balance. It's them that are doing it, and they're just soaking it up. And executives are the ones getting nervous about what's going on because it's just very transparent. So that's what I love about it. It's like,
Right.
I like when people get nervous. You're doing something right when that's happening.
Yeah. Well, that just enough nervousness causes the thinking to go on, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully the thinking is in the right direction. So Dave, how about so I want to encourage the students. This is a great opportunity to get some insight. Maybe some free consulting from somebody that gets per day more than I get paid in a week or a month or whatever. So please, type a question in the chat, and we'll probably ask you to read it out and ask it directly, so we get some other people besides from Dave and me on the camera here. But Dave, maybe in sort of warm up to that, maybe you can share some stories of lean successes or lean failures. Give the students sort of a sense of some of the things that you've done there.
Well, hopefully more successes than failures. But I mean, honestly, you learn so much from the failures, and more so than the successes. My best success story is working with a unionized MRO, so maintenance, repair, and overhaul operation up there in San Francisco, where in the first couple of weeks, the president of the union and I called him his henchman, but he was his right-hand man. He sounded and felt right out of Jersey, so it felt like I was watching Scarface. You guys probably don't even remember that movie, but it felt like I was watching Scarface. And they took me outside and said, "Hey, look, Mr. Consultant, this is how this is going to go, and you're not doing anything here." And I ended up riding motorcycles down the coast with those guys, and they were one of my LinkedIn updates for lean, and they actually wrote lean into their union contract for the next leadership team that came in, which they knew was going to happen. Couldn't get away from that. So that was certainly felt like a great success, just because of the cultural side of it. I mean, this process, with all the nice technical tools that you have in lean and the whole performance management gig, which is great, it really does come down to culture. If you can convince people what they want to do and what's the success for them, what's in it for them, the with them is always like front and center to getting things to happen. So that was a success. I think there's been a number of failures, or at least not lived up to what I wanted it to be. So I had a small team in a automotive assembly shop, and the client asked me to take over as a GM. And when you're the GM and everybody knows you're short timer, it is really difficult. Plus, it takes away from being able to do the transformation. So if you're a transformation person and you're in the lead role, you think, oh, I've got all the room, I make the decision. But there's so much that has to happen on a day-to-day basis for a GM, and I've played the GM, 3 or 4 times now, that you can't do CI in the same level that you need to get the buy-in and the commitment. And so I felt like it didn't go fast enough. I felt like I should have had the client make sure they put a person in that position first, and let me be the right-hand man driving the transformation with my team, because it was just hard. And I actually did that in the field. I said, I'm not taking the position. I learned my lesson. You need to have somebody in the role, so that I can leave behind capabilities in your organization. they put somebody in the role, and she and I just partnered. She rocked it. She got, she advanced her career. She took out 20% of the cost, and we were just side by side in her office. But she dealt with all the day-to-day HR issues and legal issues and all the stuff, so that I can like get into the weeds and work with her team. And as long as the people will give you leverage for their teams, and things happen, right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
And it's interesting that role where, somebody else is taking that sort of administrative flack or sort of doing that, and you can be the person that enables the right things to happen. I think that's really powerful. The other thing I really like about what you said is the idea about, maybe, the necessity of somebody that could be there that represents that long-term thinking, right? And it's not always about sort of the short-term breakthroughs, but it's doing the right things to put you in position for the long term.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly and I see that question. So specific certifications you think open lots of doors for you during the beginning of your career.
Well, let's let Callista, go ahead and ask that question. So Callista, go ahead and ask the question.
Oh, so I was just going to ask about specific certifications, especially for someone who may not be thinking about going into like production, but just what's the most like worth it in your brain? Like if you take away one thing, what certification would you get?
It's a good question. Honestly, I don't, and I'm really part of the interviewing process for us and my clients. Like I'm actively interviewing for them. And instead of the certification, I put much more weight in the internship or some practical experience. Because I mean, if you get black belt certified or these certifications out there, they're helpful, but it's really got to be live in an activity, right? In a problem for an organization. And I'm telling you, in the interviews, that's kind of what sets people apart. Like if you haven't had an internship, it's really hard these days, at least to get the better role. So I would invest there. I mean, that helped me the most, just having the new me experience. I mean, when I was at Poly, you had to actually bid. You had a certain number of points. I don't know if they still do this, Eric, but we had to bid a certain number of our points to the interviewers that were coming in. And so you had to make your guess. And I put like all my chips in the Toyota basket. They interviewed 250 folks for 6 positions down there in Toyota Motor Sales at the time before they moved out to Cincinnati. And it was all about the co-op that I did, the internship at NUMMI. Because I could talk about specific things, you see it, you understand it, and I got better about quality, and I took all the lessons learned from what I at least had in the first couple of years at Poly, but then you got a real life kind of smacked around, made your mistakes, and learned a ton, and got contacts. So anyhow, long way of saying I put much more weight in the internship than I would any certification.
Thanks, Callista. I appreciate that question. And one thing, to sort of amplify what Dave is saying, I talked to other, professors and people that do hiring of Lean Six Sigma candidates, and we've asked that same sort of question. And the people that are sharp, that understand this kind of thing, like Dave, and that, if you come in there with the certification, the first thing that they do, they'll kick the tires, right? And say, well, that's nice, you got your black, but what projects did you do? Tell me, describe a time when you did this project or you had this problem or whatnot. So it's all about the experience, not necessarily about the rubber stamp, right? It's kind of where it goes. So
we actually have a interviewing tool. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for sharing this and being videoed on this, Eric, but it's called a personal experience interview, and it's doing what Eric said. I literally tell the candidates, like, look, I want you to talk about you, and you want to say I don't want to hear team anymore. I know you're told talk about teams, talk about the group you worked with, talk about the leadership. No, I want to hear what you said, what you did, and why you said it, what you learned from it. And so it gets really personal, right? It gets really specific so that you can really understand, did this person really know anything about the whatever it was? And how were they really involved, and what roles did they take? So if it was a green belt certification and it was this big project to reduce whatever dirt in the light colored vehicles, I'm going to know if they were really involved by the question. So yeah, very valid.
All right.
So since there's no questions, Eric, the one thing I would say to folks, if you're considering consulting, I'll put my little pitch in here.
Yeah.
It's generally a 3-year gig. It's not a career. I mean, the shelf life of the consultant's generally 3 years, unless you're wacky like me and really enjoy the mix. And I do love the mix. But at the top 3 most stressful things in people's lives is switching jobs, and I switch jobs every 3-6 months. and you just, when you come to enjoy that, it's kind of like it's an addiction to all these different problems, all these different people, and I just love that challenge. But either way, you get a super good experience. If it's the 3 years like most, you get a fire hose of big issues, and you're basically on a 3-6 month interview with the best companies in the world on their biggest problems. And it really does give you an advanced learning and advances at careers. Most people that leave don't leave because they were told to leave. They leave because they got great opportunities and they used it for just the next learning after college. We have, I think the last 25 years, we're the #1 place for Harvard grads to go. And I think there's 3 of us poly grads here in 33,000 people. But there's lots of good consulting firms. And so there's a lot to offer if you think about, like, hey, if I'm considering what do I do with my career, consulting is a great place to go, right? Because it gives you so much exposure to a bunch of different things. So that's my pitch. I'm not just pitching McKinsey, and there's a number of great firms out there, but it really is a good learning experience to build on your first 3 years, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I'm also sort of amazed, David, in the way you've taken this learning and understanding of lean, right? The approach that they're learning in this class, and you've turned that into sort of an engine that allows you to do those changes and help companies in 3 to 5 months and sort of move on. So it's really a pretty powerful tool that these students can get involved with. So, well,
like I said, I wanted to travel. I didn't want to have a boss forever, and I wanted to kind of be in charge of my own agenda.
Yeah.
And once you put in the dues in the front side, it's really pretty fun on the backside. So, yeah. And I'll be starting up a business out there in Avila before long. So I couldn't have done that without this kind of exposure. At least not done it as easily. Now being as confident after helping a lot of businesses. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that too, Dave. So Dave, this is the wrap up. I've kind of asked this question. I have to go back to some of your previous interviews to see how consistent you are, but I want you to, give, for these, let's see, how many students we got? 58 students minus however many we are. This is the next generation, hopefully, of university educated lean professionals kind of going out there in the world. So what kind of piece of advice do you have for them in wrap up? Oops, we switched.
He asks this question every time, everybody, and so hopefully I answer it different every single time. But I guess that one with is it Calista? That's one of my big advice is like, look, a couple, I guess. There's one that, hey, look, if you can get some exposure first before you're interviewing, it will be a big help. But the other, and I tell this to all the experienced hires too that are coming into my firm, is I did what I wanted to do, meaning like I turned down a lot of stuff, a lot of projects, just because I wasn't interested in the type of work or the type of project. Some I did too long, and I realized that too late, and then shifted. But you really don't do nearly as well if you're not passionate about the stuff you're doing. And I ask myself every 6 months, is this what I want to do? And it's really kind of, I think, a healthy thing to do, and be comfortable with changing jobs. Although I think your generation changes jobs much more frequent than I do, or my generation does, but it's still a very valid thing. Like I would change for reasons only about like, is this giving me fulfillment? Do I enjoy it? Because if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to be nearly as effective. So I would definitely put that in there. And honestly, Eric, I don't know if I said that last time.
Well, like you said, I get the data I can check now that we're recording. So
Yeah.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this while you're traveling through Utah or whatever. And we're going to look forward, and we've got to get together for a glass of wine next time you're in town pretty quick, and maybe do a little dinner together. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Anybody can reach out to me. I'm in town all the time. I'm always happy to sit down with coffee. If somebody's considering consulting, I'm happy to talk about it. And it is lucrative compared to the other jobs. It does give you advancement and career positions. It just does, because you're working with the executive team. So anyhow, Eric's got my contacts. You're all welcome to reach out to me, and I'll try to manage as much as I can to sit down and talk.
Okay. All right, Dave, thank you. So let's see, our tradition now for saying goodbye is everybody turn on your videos. Give Dave a little bit of a wave goodbye so he sees that people are actually alive, and watching on this thing. So there we go. Take care of yourself, Dave. We'll see you later.